What's up, Doritos? And welcome back to the Game Addicts podcast, a show where we talk about the modern and retro video games that we play and collect. Hello and welcome, each and every one of you. I'm this podcast player, Brando, and I hope this podcast finds you guys on this Thanksgiving holiday, as it is here at least in North America, United States area. Wherever you guys are around the world, I hope you guys are having a good day too. But I hope this podcast finds all of you guys safely. Please, guys, safe travels. First and foremost, sending those good vibes out there for all you guys listening to this show. It's been a few weeks since I sit down with you guys, and I've kind of, I'm still doing what I said I was going to do, take a bit of a step back with the coming of the baby and everything. Things are settling in nicely around here, and I'm hoping to, at least after the holiday time, I'm still going to release episodes about every other week, and I still actually have plans to do another deep dive. I did that one for Final Fantasy VIII, which did very well for me, and it was my first time. I did notes and everything, and I talked about it for an hour and a half. I'm going to do another one, and I am going to do nothing else. I have it right here. I am going to talk about, with the game coming out next year, for the next one, I'm going to be talking about The Last of Us. As I almost smacked myself in the face. I'm pretty sure I did. Anyways, guys, how's it going, all you guys? This is episode 141. 141 episodes, As I sat down to try and think about what I was going to talk about this week, because I'm not quite ready yet for the next deep dive. I haven't sat down to really think about, or to compress my thoughts into that kind of level, because that actually did take some time to do for FF8. As I said, I actually sat down and wrote notes. I wrote them on paper, that way I would try to streamline my thoughts instead of just rambling incoherently. But when I sat down this week to try and figure out what I'm going to talk about, there's so much negativity going on in the gaming world. I mean, look at what's going on with Pokemon Sword and Shield. The internet is just a crazy place. I can't find any other way to say that. It is a crazy place, a wild and crazy place. And, with Death Stranding, it got mixed reviews. And I think I said last week, it got exactly what I thought it was going to get. I'm still excited to play the game eventually. I didn't get it at launch. I already said I wasn't going to do that. I was going to wait. I was going to wait to see what the general consensus is. And I've heard that people who aren't getting the game, or not getting it, either mentally or getting into it, they don't like it, But those that are really find the Kojima style of game making, so to speak, fascinating, which I account myself among those. Being a fan of Metal Gear Solid, of Snatcher, of Zone of the Enders, of that series. I do like Kojima's style of making games, so I think it's more up my alley than maybe some other guys. But I decided I didn't want to talk about anything negative this week. I didn't want to be another podcast that just threw out more negative news, more negative coverage of these things. And, because there's negativity sells when it comes to anything really. But I mean, in particular to gaming, on YouTube, if I were to sit here and make quick 10-minute YouTube videos about all these negative comments, and I want to, take a second to say this podcast has covered a lot of negativity. I mean, the last year alone, look at all the stuff that we talked about with Bethesda and BioWare, but we love those companies and we want to cover it. But since we've done so much, let's take a step back and not talk about the controversies with Death Stranding and the Game Awards, that kind of thing that's going on where, oh, hey, Jeff Keighley and Kojima are friends. Jeff Keighley is in the game. He's gone out of his way to try and celebrate Kojima's career at the Game Awards. Obviously Jeff Keighley's a big Kojima fan and friend, and yet the game got nominated for a bunch of awards, which some people feel like maybe it shouldn't be nominated for so many. I don't want to talk about that stuff in depth. I don't want to break down into that because I really don't have an opinion. Like I haven't played Death Stranding, so I can't say whether or not it does deserve all the praise or negativity that that the game is getting. And I'm not playing Pokemon, so some people are rabbling on Twitter, grabbing their pitchforks, and look, I understand we gamers are passionate, but like when you have a fan base that's passionate, I feel like it is a conduct or a conduit for really in-depth, venomous fandom. Like really draws negativity, and nowhere is that more apparent than Star Wars. If you're a Star Wars fan or just a diehard, or what I'm talking about. If you're a guy that like for me who has enjoyed all the movies to some extent or the other, I've got my favorites, I've got my least favorites, but when you take a look back and you just hear it, there's this dude on YouTube, and I watched a couple of his videos regarding Episode 9, which is the movie coming out in December, and he makes a new video like every day, every 6 hours. It's crazy because I've watched a couple and all of a sudden, they're in my recommended. But after every single one, it's like terrible news, horrific news, Episode 9 leak. Episode 9 leak news is a disaster or whatever. It's like everything. They're using these big things because negativity sells. So what am I going to do about that? I'm going to change it because today, I'm going to be talking about, I believe it's 15. I meant to get 10, but I just kept grabbing games because I want to talk about them. We have talked about retrospectives here before in the past, and one of the early ones that we did was the PlayStation 1. And I'm talking like this is over 100 episodes ago. We did the PlayStation 1. And PlayStation 1 has a very soft spot right here in my heart. I'm repping the PlayStation shirt. That was the third console that I ever owned personally after the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. I had a choice, please forgive me if you're a longtime listener. Some of these stories might be familiar, but they're over 100 episodes ago, so hopefully they're they're new to somebody, right? But I had a choice for the PS1. I could have gotten an N64 like some of my other friends had, and I played the N64 a little bit more than the Sony PlayStation, right? I had one friend that had a PlayStation at that time, and I was just captivated by it. And it got to a point where like I was captivated by the disc driven game. Like nobody I knew had a Saturn or a Sega CD or anything like that came before, a 3DO, whatever. So all that was foreign to me. But sitting there playing this game off of this disc, and how that you just had such clear audio, like playing a game because it's all based off of a CD instead of a cartridge. And also the load times, we had actual load times. Cartridge stuff was just like pop. Okay, we're in. But I want to talk about some of my favorite games for the original PlayStation, and some of these are not like when I say top games. Okay, some of these are not games that you guys are probably going to be thinking, oh, that's one of the best games on the console. Some of them might be. I guarantee you there's probably 1, 2, or 3, or 4 that are probably on your guys' list. But some of these are just also games that are notable for my history with the system. So, first of all, it was the very first game I got with the system, other than the demo disc, because I'm a wrestling fan, I picked up Warzone, WWF Warzone. Now, this isn't my original copy. This is the green label, Greatest Hits. I have no idea where my original copy went. I got my first PlayStation in October of 1998. And, of course, around that time is when, the Attitude Era, so to speak, of the WWF was really gearing up. And this game, I want to say, came out that year. Yeah, 98. But, of course, there were wrestlers on here that were no longer at the company, like Bret Hart and British Bulldog and whatnot. They had already left the company the prior year. And so a lot of the stuff that were based off of this game were from 97, which I watched. And I was like, awesome. This game is pretty horrible. It's made by Acclaim. But at the time, dude, I was just like, wow, like this game is awesome. And you had to do like these weird little like up, down, square X to do a body slam. It was stupid. It was almost like you're playing Mortal Kombat or something to do a damn fatality, to do a basic move. But I just remember like, it was the audio, it was the clarity, of the announcers, of the guys in the ring, of the music, I was captivated by the game. Now, here's a story about the first time I actually got the PlayStation. I got it, I think we put it on layaway around September, right? And then we were able to pick it up at the end of October. So that Friday night that my dad picked it up for me was actually my town's Halloween or a trick or treat, right? Because my town usually did it on the Friday before Halloween. So Halloween could either be like leading up to or on that night, but typically it was the Friday before. So I don't really remember, without looking at a calendar, what day that was, but it was right before that. So me and my buddy Rob, he was going to spend the night at my house, and we were going to stay up all night playing PlayStation. We were going to play wrestling, and that demo disc is all I had. But we had a problem. We couldn't figure out how to hook it up to our TV because it had the yellow, white, and red cables. I had always used coax cables, the old RF cables. And we had a VCR. Guess what? If I'd have been smart and actually knew how to do this stuff, you could actually do it. But I was incapable at the time to figure this part out. So I had to wait for like the next day for my dad to go buy an RF cable to play. So we went out trick-or-treating, we got our candy, and we didn't play a lick of PlayStation all night. Sleepover ruined. But I did play a crap ton of Warzone that same weekend. I want to say it was either that weekend or maybe the weekend after that. I rented my first game for the system, which I'm going to get to later. But I wanted to talk about that game so I could talk about this game. This game is one of the best wrestling games on the system. I'm starting off with 2 wrestling games, and that is SmackDown 2, Know Your Role. Not my original copy, once again, but I tracked it down when I was collecting. SmackDown 2 is a completely different game from Warzone. This is more of an arcadey, approach. I think this came out in 2000 or something like that. And of course, the first SmackDown's okay, it's pretty good, but this one had like that endless season mode where you could just go on and on and on and on, and you'd have some storylines kind of kick up, and you could do your own creative dudes and take them through there, and you had like Hell in a Cell and stuff like that. And I just remember doing like Royal Rumbles, and there was actually dudes in here, namely the Big Show. I don't know if you guys remember him. Big, tall. He was the giant in WCW. Well, his name is the Big Show, and in the WWF, and he was not in this game. He was in the one before it, but I guess he went down. He got sent to go get better at his wrestling skills. He wasn't in SmackDown 2, but man, my hat's all messed up. Of course, you guys on audio don't really give a crap about that. I haven't worn my hat in a while. Anyway. I was playing the Royal Rumble mode where you got like 4 guys in the ring or whatever, and you eliminate some guy by tossing him over the rope, and they count down from 10, and the next guy runs out, And I just remember me and my buddy were playing the Royal Rumble, and that countdown went, and then he's like, "Where is the big show?" And he come, we're like, "What? He's not even in this game." And his name said unknown. Well, it's the unknown. He's running out. We're like, oh, we are freaking out that Big Show is in this game, and we couldn't figure out how to play as him. Apparently, that was the thing. SmackDown 2, I remember that came out, and I rented that game along with another game that's in this list of games that me and friends played the absolute crap out of. SmackDown 2 got a lot of heavy rotation with me and my friends, sitting there afternoons, evenings, all nights, just man, having lots of fun playing some wrestling. This next game, it was a game that I got. It was in '98 for Christmas. So I had I believe this was the third game that I ever owned. I can't remember. It's either second, third, whatever. Need for Speed 3, Hot Pursuit. I don't remember how and why I got this game. Maybe it was a magazine, maybe it was a commercial. But man, I had a lot of fun playing this game. A lot of fun with Rob playing this game. Me and Rob played the absolute crap out of this. I remember there was a code for you to get some car called the El Nino, and it was like the fastest car in the game. And if you had that car, you were just like flying past people. And it said it had the best handling in the game, which is wrong. It did not have the best handling in the game. That thing was like, it was like a wet noodle all over the road. It was like you're driving on ice half the time. In fact, I remember Rob always drove the Jaguar Sport XJR 15, and while it was not nearly as fast as my car, I would be crashing into walls, and he would just zoom past me because he could take those turns like a champ with that car's handling. This game was absolutely awesome as far as it had a lot of really cool tracks free to unlock, some cars to unlock as well, and then really cool multiplayer fun. And the graphics for the time for this, not Gran Turismo level, were pretty damn good. And I remember this was something, like fun and wholesome for the whole family. The next game, I couldn't remember what game I actually got along with, because I got it for Christmas, but I rented a game, right after I got the PlayStation, and it was not the game that I'm going to show you, but related, because then for Christmas I wanted to buy that game. I didn't have enough Christmas money, but so I had to settle for the greatest hits version of the prior game, and that is Resident Evil. Now I have the big box version here. This is the original big box. I had the director's cut greatest hits, but I just absolutely love this version of the game. And actually, my disc is not in here. It's probably in the console, but I love how you can have that. It shows the lab and everything in the background there. Big box. I'm not really huge on big box collecting. There are some out there that would be cool to own, but when I found this, I absolutely had to have it. The original Resident Evil, to me, it is the B movie of the PlayStation. And I mean, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that with the really poor acting and everything. And it has that live action intro where a lot of games are trying to do that because they could have the space to do that kind of stuff on a disc. Man, just that acting walking into the mansion, Barry Burton, what is this? And then like 10 seconds later, the dude's like, wow, what a mansion. I'm totally not the bad guy. But no, this zombie ridden mansion for you to go and explore, I mean, it was creepy. They had the jump scares with the dogs coming through the window, jumping at you. But I played the crap out of it because I couldn't afford to get this game for a little while. Because this is the game that I rented right after I got the PlayStation. Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 2, if that's not high on your list for best PlayStation games, I don't know what's wrong with you, man. And if that's wrong, I don't want to be right. Because Resident Evil 2 scared the bejesus out of me when I got it. Man, I just remember, sitting there and I had seen the video on the demo disc that I got with the system. I'm like, this is nuts. This is what you can do now with games. This is crazy. Well, I get the game, and it scares the crap out of me trying to fight my way through the streets. And once I finally get into the damn police station, what do they throw at you? The liquor. I remember getting killed by the liquor, and then it was game over. I hadn't saved yet. I had to start all over again. And I remember like going to the park and was just like walking around being like, what if this were a real zombie apocalypse? You know, it's weird. It's like when you the first time that your little mind, and I mean, I guess mine was a little at the time. I was like 12 or something, but still, the first time that you actually see something like that in a 3D realm, you know, I'd never played anything like it, and Resident Evil 2 would go on to gain further accolades with me and of course gamers all across the world as being like the series entry that would really define it. Because, you know, the first one started it. It got it going with the tank controls and the inventory management and the puzzles and everything. 2 brought it home. 2 brought it home, streamlined it, made it feel a little bit more fun, a little bit more fast, not as janky with the tank controls, but they're still there. But man, it is so much fun. And of course, you have 2 different scenarios to run through. The first game you can play as 2 people, but it's like the same path, right? You kind of did the same thing with slightly different characters involved with. But in this one, what was cool is that you had 2 different paths. You can play either character on path A or either character path B, because these 2 characters get split up, right? And so once you completed path A with one person, you could then start path B, the stuff that you didn't see, with the other person. And then, of course, what happens this year? We get the remake of Resident Evil 2 for the PS4 and Xbox One PC. And it was awesome. It's nominated for Game of the Year this year at the Game Awards. And, of course, it's Game of the Year for a lot of other people, probably myself included. Because that game, I played that game. Now, you know, back in the day when I didn't have a chance to buy a whole lot of games, you know, you would make the games last. You would play the crap out of them. But just because I couldn't get enough of it. I have a room full of games to play now. I've got all that stuff back there. I've got all this stuff over here that you guys can't see. And I've got tons of stuff on my back catalog. And all I could do was for an entire month and a half was sit there and play the new Resident Evil 2 remake. I mean, they did it right. They absolutely did it right. And even though like I didn't show Nemesis, Resident Evil 3 is also on the PS1. And I mean, it just pushed it forward even more. But I didn't really feel like you know, kicking the horse. So hopefully we get that remake soon. The next game, we're actually going back to another driving type game. This game, I actually got. There was a trifecta of games in my history with the PlayStation. My dad, he worked with a guy at some factory or whatever. I think he used to work at like Bell Sports, but he worked with a guy that was selling a lot of his PlayStation games, right? Also, total. Okay, so guys, I just took a swig of this apple juice that I have in a Rheingeist brewery glass. Totally, I could have just kayfabed that. If anybody knows what that means, congratulations, you're in the club. But I just totally could have just not even sold that. Make you guys think I'm actually drinking beer, just like they do on the TV. Man, I'm sitting there drinking my apple juice. It's just one of my favorite glasses there. But my dad bought some of this guy's games. He was selling them like 3 at a time. I remember getting like some sports games, Triple Play 98, Andretti Racing, NCAA Football 98. I remember getting SimCity 2000. I remember getting Soviet Strike. But I got 3. And 2 of them are out here. The other one is an honorable mention. I'll just say, Tomb Raider. I mean, come on. Tomb Raider games were awesome back in the day. They're kind of hard to play now. They're difficult for me to get back into. But this game was the other one that really captivated me. Twisted Metal 2. I had never played the first one. And this one, man, it's arcade, car demolition fun. And basically, you have a bunch of different characters you can play as. They have different missiles and machine guns and special moves that they can each do. And then of course you do have special codes, which I actually got for all the 3 games I got in this set: Tomb Raider, this one, and then another one. I got the strategy guides, which I don't I didn't really need them, but it was cool to have them. The dude had them, and he just threw them in for free. And so I actually got the codes for Sweet Tooth and Minion. And I found out Minion is a boss to play as. Oh, man, you just run dudes over. The dude is an actual tank. But, no, I got a lot of cool multiplayer fun out of this. You could do, like, the 2-player tournament mode where you and a friend just kill everybody else on the map and have fun. And I remember, playing in New York City. You're on top of the rooftops of these New York City skyscrapers. And there was like, and this kind of stuff wouldn't really fly today, but the Statue of Liberty was in the distance, and if you kept shooting at the Statue of Liberty, it would turn into a bikini-clad, blonde-haired girl, and you're like, whoa, hey, I'm a young adolescent teenager. Well, if you kept shooting at it, then all of a sudden, it wouldn't just be like a slender girl; she would be a bigger gal. Tell you what, wouldn't fly today. Not in today's age. I tell you, there's nothing wrong with either gal. I just want to say that right out front. Twisted Metal 2 is a lot of fun though. The next one's another driving game. In fact, it is the driving game. It's called Driver 2. Driver 2, man, this was like, I played the original Driver first, and you had to do that really super impossible freaking driver's test at the very beginning. You had to do all these things in this small little parking garage and do all of that before you can actually start playing the game. This one kind of throws you in, and I like it for that. And also you have the cool, and both games have the free roam mode, and I think there's like 3 cities. I believe, 4 cities. You have Chicago, Havana, Rio, and Vegas. And, of course, Chicago, I would roam around there a lot because I actually had been there. But, the map didn't match up. But it felt more familiar than the other ones. But each city had its own special car that you could find and unlock. Driver 1, you could not get out of the vehicle. This was made by Infogrames. And they would actually go on to make the Stuntman series, which people be like, oh, well, there you go, right there, because what this game did, what Driver 1 and Driver 2 did, it made 3D driving, roaming around open world stuff before Grand Theft Auto made it popular. Because Grand Theft Auto was out, but it was that top-down, cartoony looking, God view looking down. It was hard to see where you were going. This game was behind your view, just like one of the other racing games, just like Need for Speed or anything like that. But you were behind the view. You had good control. You can drive around and do some stunts and have fun. Driver 2 let you get out of the car and carjack other people. Tell me that's not Grand Theft Auto. It is. You just can't shoot nobody. Even though it looks like he's got guns, it looks like he's like running around, and like his shadow looks like he's got like guns in his hands. He doesn't have anything. But the story mode's pretty fun to play. You got some cool stuff that you got to do, evade cops. But then, me and my friends would just try to get the cops on us and see how long we can last, just like we would go on to do in Grand Theft Auto proper, right? So, speaking of racing, one of the other awesome racing games for the system, and one I had a lot of fun with, Crash Team Racing. Of course, this is the answer to Mario Kart 64, right? And I think this is right up there with it, to be honest with you. I played more Mario Kart on the Super Nintendo, than I did the N64. My buddies had it, and we played it, but I actually had a lot more fun with Crash Team Racing than I did Mario Kart 64. Maybe it's preference. Maybe I'm just a Sony pony. Maybe I'm just a dude who maybe I was like snubbing the N64. Mario Kart 64 is awesome. You can't deny the fact that the series has had that kind of longevity and is still going today. Meanwhile, Crash Team Racing kind of died off and had a remake of it kind of come back around more recently. But Crash Team Racing on the PlayStation, it gave PlayStation owners an ability to kind of scratch that itch, if you get what I mean, and it was super fun. And my only thing is that since it was just kind of Crash characters, I wish there were, at the time, I wish they could have used a lot more like Mario Kart used other characters from the Mario and other Nintendo stuff. I think it would have been cool. Kind of like how they would later do with Sonic, how they just use a bunch of other Sega characters. I think that would have been neat. Now, there is a series of games for the PlayStation, and then they would go on forever because they would just be super popular, and then they would just die. And that is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. I'm not going to show you one of those games because while I did enjoy Tony Hawk 1 and 2, they were fun. I actually played this one first, and I always held them to the standard, and I feel like this game is actually the better game. And that is Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX. Two things about this game. Number one, R.I.P. Dave Mirra. And number two, Sublime. This is my introduction to Sublime. It had an incredible soundtrack that includes, right here on the back, Sublime, Cypress Hill, Rancid, Social Distortion, Deftones, Pennywise, Dropkick Murphys. Yeah, it's the first time I heard Dropkick Murphys as well. But I mean, this game had that ragdoll physics, and it had a lot of fun playing this with my pal Jason. We would play this all of the time, and just sometimes we just make them wreck on purpose just to see them like flop around. A lot of fun. Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX. They actually made a second one for that, but it was called BMX Remix. It maybe had like some new levels or like some new stages and whatnot. But when I mentioned Tony Hawk Pro Skater, the developer of that game is going to make this next game I'm going to talk about. Spider-Man. They did two of these. They did this one and then another one called Enter the Electro. And man, this one was a big 3D romp-arounder. It's kind of the controls don't really translate well to today. It's kind of, I find it difficult to try and play. But this was so much fun. They had so many characters you can unlock so many different suits. You can have like Captain Universe, the black symbiote suit, but there was just like a smorgasbord of villains. Venom was around, Doc Ock, Carnage, and then you also had cameos from other heroes like Daredevil and Punisher, and even Captain America. Human Torch is in it. So many different things. Stan Lee narrates the thing. And, it gives you its own little cool story to go off of. But, man, playing those games like on the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis, like Maximum Carnage and stuff like that, this brought that to the next level for me. Being able to swing from building to building, not like it is in the modern Spider-Man game, of course, for the PS4. But this one, in my imagination and memory, that's what that was to me back then, being a kid. And I'll never forget all the late nights playing Spider-Man. This next one was a game that I didn't enjoy when I was, all these other games I enjoyed when I was a kid. This game I didn't enjoy until I was more like into the 2000s era, because I really slept on it, because I enjoyed the series kind of leading up, but I really didn't get into it after the Super Nintendo. Castlevania Symphony of the Night. How can you mention the PlayStation without mentioning this game? This game had such great control, soundtrack, stuff that when I finally played it, it captivated me. It took me a long time to get to it. One of those things where I might have played it when my PS2 broke. My PS2 ended up breaking, and I got a story about that a little bit later on too. But I had a period where I didn't have a PS2, and there were a couple games that I played and dived into, and finally I was able to get my hands on I rented it from somewhere. Finally played this one, Symphony of the Night, and I never beat it until I got the copy much later, much later, because when you get to a certain point in the game, you think you beat it, and then they turn the castle upside down and you got to beat it again. And I said no. I was to be fair, I was kind of playing another game at the time too. So the next game, I actually played the first one of these first. I rented it because I saw it in the back of a Game Pro magazine. I actually remember which magazine. I remember where I saw the game first. And then this, I saw the commercials for this game coming out, and I just had to have it. And that is Siphon Filter 2. This was a Sony game, of course, from 989 Studios. Siphon Filter was like that run and gun / stealth game. There were levels where you had to be stealthy. And if you got caught, for some of the levels, it's over. Some of the other levels you get caught, makes it difficult for you. There's other levels where you're literally just supposed to run around and just pop everybody. Lots of fun, cheesy action movie. Almost kind of like, it's a secret agent type stuff, but I would almost, like, if I were to see this around today, like, you could go super stealthy with it, or you could go over the top action with it. And since that's kind of what the mix of the game was, in some cases, how you're running around, shooting everything, it's almost kind of very John Wickish. But they made 3 of them for the PlayStation. I feel like the second one is the best one. The first one, it's pretty good. Second one is, man, it's a roller coaster ride from beginning to end. The third one, disappointed me story-wise. This game did not disappoint me story-wise. And that is Metal Gear Solid. This is the reason why this is like at the top of the list, and not like, because I got 2 games after this. This easily could have been the number one, but this was the second game that ever captivated me as far as story goes. What I mean by that is, like, I played some other games first, right? I played at least one, and I loved the story of it, and I kept playing it through. But I definitely remember borrowing Metal Gear Solid from a friend, and played it. I think I started playing on like Thursday night, and then on Saturday night, I had got to near the end, and I would not go to sleep until I beat it. I was like, I have to know what happens. It's one of those games, right? And Metal Gear Solid, I said earlier in the very beginning of the podcast, talking about Hideo Kojima, this is like a masterpiece from him. And it literally is a cinematic experience in a game, in an era where that was just impossible. And all the cutscenes are done with in-game engine. The entire game is voice acted by a stellar cast. It's not cheesy like Resident Evil. I mean, depending on your level of cheese, okay, let's be real. But you just have some awesome, like at least anime cheese level of awesomeness here for the voice acting. It tells a phenomenal story from beginning to end. And the gameplay would get better with subsequent sequels. Wasn't necessarily, when I played this for the very first time after playing a game like Siphon Filter, I was like, I don't like this. This is weird. But once you get used to it, and you follow the game, and you play the game, and you just get engrossed into the story that is Metal Gear Solid, you just can't. There's almost no other game other than the RPGs that can stand up to the level of depth that this game put into its story and into its characters. And that's exactly what I'm ending with, because I have 2 RPGs, and I have RPGs that are still on the shelf up here that I could have pulled down. And of course, just recently I talked about Final Fantasy VIII, so I'm not going to talk about that here today, but I'm going to talk about the other ones. And that is not my original copy, but my replacement, Final Fantasy IX. Final Fantasy IX is a game that I first played when I rented it, just like I did with 8. And Final Fantasy IX is a game that I beat before, like the very first night that I owned it. I rented it for 2 weeks straight. My dad got tired of renting it. He goes, fine, I'll buy it. Jeez. And he came home, gave me the copy of the game. I put it in, and I beat it that night. I came out, and I'm grinning ear to ear. I'm like, he goes, what? I said, I just beat the game you bought me. He goes, really? I went, yeah, and I'm going to restart it. And the game was that good. I was so... 9 was not the first RPG that captivated me, but I was just... After having that dam broke for me, and being able, like, having a game that has a level of story and character depth as a book, as a movie. Final Fantasy IX is exactly one of those. And the one thing that sets Final Fantasy IX apart is its style and its translation and its localization, Whereas, other RPGs aren't so great in that aspect. 9 is like, it has so much depth in its world. It feels like a living, breathing world. When you're in the overworld and there's a scene where the game automatically does this for you, but early on in the game, it shows like the airship moving from one of the gates to get into the country to the actual city of the capital city of Lindblom, and you just see all these other airships flying around and landing, and they're just out there. There are people flying and doing the shipments and going from place to place. It just feels like a breathing world, and there's so many NPCs that have actual names and characterization for them. It is some of the most in-depth storytelling I've ever seen in a game. And Final Fantasy IX, it is very hard-pressed. When people ask me what is the best Final Fantasy ever, it's got to be 9. 9, after 9, 10 is great, but they're all sort of just different flavors for different people, different strokes for different folks. Some people might like 12. I find it a little bit hard to get into. I don't dislike it, but it's just it's there. The 13s are completely different. 15 is different. It's hard to say with any of those games. Like, are those the greatest? I don't know. People who really are big fans of the series will say 6. There's people 7. Some other people 4. And I'm also in those camps. I love those games. I can make arguments for those games and against those games. But I feel like when you're saying what is hands down the best Final Fantasy, I think it's Final Fantasy 9, because the last game I'm gonna show you is my favorite game of all time, and nobody on this podcast should be surprised. Final Fantasy 7, but it's not the greatest game. It's got its faults. It's got translation issues. It's got localization issues. The gameplay is phenomenal. The graphics are dated. The materia system is great. I love it. The story is mostly great. What I say by that is that there's some translation stuff that kind of like could be better, and they're going to be fixing that with the remake. I'm so excited. But Final Fantasy VII was the third game that I got along with Twisted Metal 2 and Tomb Raider. And my buddy William had told me about this game, and he told me all these things. He hyped it up. It was up here. I had to play this game, and I put it in and was immediately like, I don't get it. I don't get any of this. I don't see how this is great. And I instantly went around with a gun-toting badass chick, or with the Twisted Metal cars and just blowing stuff up. It wasn't until later on I actually gave it the time of day to sit down and get past that first mission and get into the actual story of the game. And it took a little bit for me to get into it. I'll be honest with you. It wasn't, I think I got the game in early 99. So FF8 was coming out in September, and I wasn't in the know. I didn't play FF4, 6, or even Chrono Trigger, some of my favorite games from the Super Nintendo era. I didn't play any of those back then. I wasn't into RPGs back then. This 7 was my first introduction to really playing a awesome consoleized RPG, because I might have played Pokemon by that, but it's around that period of time. It's like, if I played Pokemon, it had to have been like in the summer or spring-summer of 98 or something like that. I just don't remember if I had played it or because I remember playing it with Rob. So it was around that time. But then I didn't play 7 until after Christmas sometime, late winter or I guess, January, February of 99, March. Because I remember him coming home, him being my dad, with the game. And by the time summer started and I was able to sit down and play more of it, other than having to go to school and all that kind of stuff. Man, I remember being at a certain point. I remember we went on vacation. Me, my dad, and my mom. We went to vacation down to Texas, and I could not play it. And all I wanted to do was play it. I remember getting a magazine that had it was all about Resident Evil Nemesis. And they're like, oh, this is what we know. There's all the screenshots and all this stuff. And I'm just like, oh, man, it's going to be awesome. But I was all about FF7. I was like, I got to get back. I got to play that. And I beat it. I beat it that summer. And turned around after I beat it and after I understood more of the game. And there's still stuff today that I'm finding out about this game and went, I'm an idiot. Why didn't I ever do that? But of course that hyped me up again once I started seeing stuff for 8. I was like, I have to play that. 7 captivated me. To say it was like 7, and then probably Final Fantasy 8. Then the next game that if I'm just going off memory, that really captivated me story wise was Metal Gear Solid, and then of course the one after that, FF9. Legend of Dragoon is in there too. I forgot to grab that game. Too bad. It's only 15. I'm not doing 16, but yeah, those guys. Those will be 15 games. Some of my favorite games for the PS1. Sitting here, about ready to wrap up this podcast. I think the next episode I'm going to do is going to be The Last of Us deep dive. I'm going to try and sit down and make my notes and talk about that game in a much needed in-depth analysis for you guys, talking about the characters, the story, maybe some of the. I'm going to try and do some digging and find out some of the background of the making of the game if I can get some of that in there as well. Until next time, guys, check out the podcast and all the podcast platforms that we are. I actually moved the bugs up here, and they're touching. I forgot to fix that. Oops. Oh, well. Special Easter egg for anybody watching episode 141. I actually took SoundCloud off there because SoundCloud requires you to have a special paid account, and I was just putting one episode up at a time, and then I would lose those statistics, and then I would forget to put new episodes up there. So I just took it down. I'm not going to be updating SoundCloud. Sorry for those guys that really like SoundCloud. We are everywhere else, though. Apple, Spotify, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn, Google. We're on YouTube. You can look us up on YouTube. If you have YouTube, what's that? YouTube Plus, TV, whatever it is now. YouTube Red, it used to be. You can put us on, turn off your phone, and we still play in the background. But the podcast apps are so much easier, especially Podbean. I really like the Podbean app. Apple, if you guys got Apple phones. So check us out on all of those Game Addicts Podcast. Of course, GameAddictsPodcast.com, which I'm having some issues with the .com. I'm not sure what's going on, but GameAddictsPodcast.podbean.com is the actual URL that the GameAddictsPodcast.com leads back to. A lot of information. All of our socials, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Game Addicts Play. We're on Twitch, Game Addicts Play. I'm going to get back to live streaming hopefully here pretty soon, and I get some time off. I'm not sure if I'm going to maybe try and do that over Thanksgiving. I'm going to cross my fingers. At least by Christmas, I'll be doing some stuff. And I am actually thinking about live streaming my first playthrough of FF7. I've never really done a full playthrough of a first-time thing for that live stream, so I'm thinking of doing that as well. But guys, from the bottom of my heart, hope you all have had a happy Thanksgiving, and I will see you next time here on the Game Addicts Podcast. Until next time, I have been Brando. I'll see you guys later. Game on.